Hello, everyone, and welcome to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to talk about some of the live streaming options that are available in the market today, some of the setups and options you have for live streaming. But before we get started, I want to let everyone know that on this show and all of our shows going forward, we're going to be taking calls from our viewers, live video calls. So if you want to connect to us, you can just go right here at the link that's along the bottom of the screen here. It's https call-in.tv streaming alchemy. That link is also at the bottom of the show notes. So if you have a question or want to make a comment about something we're talking about, just click on the link and you can connect with the studio and we'll get you on air. All right, so let's get started. For today's show, we want to talk about different streaming options that are available for people of all different levels and with all different interests in streaming. So if we go to the slides here, probably the first place to start, which is the logical place for most people, is mobile-based streaming. As we know, our phones tend to be with us everywhere we go. And they are also, it turns out, incredibly powerful live streaming tools. Now, there are two sides to your mobile cell phone. And that's literally, there are two sides. On the front-facing side, the side with the screen, you actually have a camera and a microphone that you can use to record yourself. So when you use your mobile device as a live streaming device using these front-facing camera and microphone, you're actually doing what would typically be called a selfie stream, something where you're looking at the camera talking, discussing some topic of interest to you and your audience, and it's picking up that video that's coming in from those front-facing cameras. The other side, though, literally, is that you also have rear-facing cameras and microphones that are available on your mobile device. Now, what these let you do are capture video of what's going on around you. So if you want to live stream using your cell phone, you have the ability now to give a point of view perspective. So the watchers, the audience that you'd have watching your live stream, would see what you're seeing and be able to listen to whatever commentary you want to add. So this type of thing is ideal if you want to give behind the scenes looks at things, or if you're at a conference or event of some kind and you want to share what's going on. It can also be good if you want to do a off the cuff interview with someone and you just want to hold the camera up in front of them and ask questions off camera and get their responses. So your cell phone really gives you a lot of flexibility. And what's great about most streaming software for your mobile devices, the apps that come from different vendors, is that you can switch between these cameras. So you can do something where you're talking and looking at the camera and then switch to the rear-facing camera and share something that you'd be seeing and watching and you want to share with the viewers. But mobile actually has even a level up from this. If you want to get your audio to be at a better level, you have the ability to add external microphones to mobile devices, or at least with most mobile cameras. Most mobile phones have this. So if you're using your selfie cam, the ideal type of external microphone would be something like a lavalier, which would typically clip on your shirt or top and allow you to talk not into the microphone, but very close to the microphone. So you're not picking up a lot of the ambient noise that would be in the environment around you, but you would be getting a very strong signal as the speaker going into the phone. And I think in any live streaming setup you want to look at, one of the most important things is good audio. So if you have bad video because of poor internet connectivity or limited Wi-Fi in a given area and you're trying to do something with a mobile phone, people will watch it if the sound is good. But if the sound is terrible, even if you have pristine video, people will be more likely to just switch away and go on to something else. But now, if you are looking at recording video that's from the back rear-facing camera, sort of the where you're giving a point of view of what you're seeing, there's also the option to use directional microphones. So one of the great things, this is a microphone from Rode, which plugs into your Lightning port if you have an iPhone. One of the great things about this is you can connect it to the phone and plug it in, so it's pointing out at whatever you're pointing the phone at with the rear camera. But if you want to use it for a selfie stream, you can just flip it around and point it so then it points at you. Well, probably not as good a solution for selfie streams as the lavalier mic. It definitely is something that is flexible, letting you in any circumstance get good audio into your stream without having a lot of external gear around you, just something very simply that plugs into a single port. But if you wanted to do something that was even more complex in the mobile space, there are things like Switcher Studio, for example, which hooks up a group of cell phones into an iPad or tablet that you can control them from. So you can position multiple cell phones around the location and then take a video stream from each of those phones into your iPad and use that to stream out to your end destination. So again, this is very powerful for a mobile configuration. It gives you a way to do a multi-camera switch, managing which video stream your viewers are seeing, but still in an incredibly compact footprint. So if we look at mobile-based live streaming, there are obviously advantages and some drawbacks. So on the advantages, it's the simple adage, it's always in your pocket. So this is true in almost anything. The best camera you have for any event is the one you have right there with you. So, and that's true of almost everyone's cell phone. So if you have something with you that you want to capture, you can just pull out your cell phone and do it. The other thing is that even though we've talked about things like additional microphones that you can add, you can start live streaming with your cell phone with no additional cost. So if you have your phone, you have your data plan, you can start live streaming right away. And that's incredibly powerful. There's no extra gear that you need to get to begin. It also is probably one of the simplest ways to live stream. The apps that are provided by most streaming provisioners, whether it's Livestream, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, they're very, very simple to use, as easy as using the camera itself in most cases. And that makes it easy, again, to jump in. No real additional extra cost and no real learning curve. If you know how to use the camera on your phone, you can probably start live streaming now. The other thing that I mentioned is it's extremely portable. So this is the sort of thing, even with a more complex setup where you had multiple cell phones and a tablet, you could pack that easily in a small backpack, a couple of clamps for the phones or small lightweight tripods, and you can be up and running with a switched mobile production. So that's pretty impressive. But one of the other main benefits, even when you have other alternatives available, is that your mobile device works on cellular connections. So if you're looking to stream something that happens spontaneously, or that you're at an event or a conference and you just want to go and grab something, you don't need Wi-Fi, you don't need a wired connection. Using just your cellular connection, you can actually start live streaming. Very, very powerful. There are, however, some drawbacks. Your production options, what you can display on screen, tends to be fairly limited. It's usually just a direct video. There are some avenues to enhance that, put maybe titles under it. There are things that, in Facebook, for instance, that actually allow you to add a secondary guest where somebody that's watching could connect and join with you. But by and large, if you're looking at something which has your color scheme, your branding, having the ability to add video intros and that, you're not really going to be able to do that typically in a mobile production environment. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are limitations to the selfie camera compared to the rear camera. So I can speak from experience on the iPhone side. The rear-facing camera on the iPhone is a 12 megapixel camera, and that can actually capture video up to 4K. The front-facing camera, the selfie camera on the iPhone, is only 7 megapixel, and that actually can only go up to 720p. Maybe in the latest iPhones that's a bit different, but you still have fairly limited resolution compared to your rear-facing camera. So if selfie streams are your normal mode of live streaming, this would be something to keep in mind, that you do have some limitations there. The other piece, when it comes to the cameras themselves, is that the camera and the control surface are actually on the same one device. So this means that if you're trying to adjust something on the screen, you're actually handling the camera, which can pick up as rustling sound from the mics that are on it if you're not using an external mic. But it can also cause the camera to shake more, which gives a less professional look to the video you're streaming. So again, something to keep in mind when you're looking at the mobile side of your options. Uh, the other thing, and this is funny because I mentioned the big benefit of working on cellular, the use of wireless connections for everything can also be a bit of a drawback. Uh, Wireless can be a fickle beast, as all of us know. And sometimes you can have a great connection, and then a few minutes later, the connection can become really poor. And this is something that then would be reflected in your stream. You don't necessarily have an option to plug into a wall connection, which may not be an option in a lot of other venues. You know, you may be forced to use wireless there as well. But by and large, being on a mobile device limits you to using wireless connectivity for all of the connections you want to make. Just something to be aware of, because that is a variable that you really don't control, and you know it could end up damaging the quality of your stream at some point. And going along with that, you don't have local recording options typically in live streaming apps on mobile devices. So that means that when your stream is recorded, it's usually at the carrier, whether that's Facebook or YouTube, or another vendor you may be using. If you are streaming out there, you may have a recording captured there, but that recording is only going to be as good as the signal you get out through that whole transmission. So if somewhere along the line you do have problems with your wireless link, that is reflected in the recording that's made at the head end. That's what's typically called the CDN, the person who distributes the video out to the end destination for your viewers. So again, something to keep in mind. If you're looking to reuse this video, understand that in the mobile space, you might have limitations there with the quality that you'd get after the stream. So the other, you know, basic, easy to use mechanism for live streaming is browser-based live streaming. And this is a move now from your mobile device to a PC or to a Mac. But you really don't need a high-end device to do this. So you can work with sort of very basic laptops, no special graphics cards, and just using the webcam and the microphone that are built in. And with browser-based now, you have a few extra things you can do. First, you have a bigger control surface, so it can be easier to manipulate what you're doing, to set up everything you need prior to the stream, to respond to comments and to see comments while at the same time that you're streaming and controlling your stream. But something to keep in mind is that with your built-in webcam and microphone, the quality you get out the end stream could be even worse than the quality you'd get coming out of your cell phone. Typically, the cameras in cell phones are pretty refined through both hardware and software optimizations to give a really clean video stream coming out. And on a lot of laptops, if most of us have used them for video conferencing and that, you can tell that some of the webcams that are built in are actually pretty poor. But again, because now you have a computer that's in the mix, you can actually plug additional devices in. So if you wanted to upgrade your webcam, you could go and use an external webcam. You could use an external headset with a microphone. So again, you're getting audio right up close to where you're talking, and that can make for very clean sound. You can also even go higher end and put really high quality microphones, right on a desk and produce something that can be a very effective live stream. The great thing about things like Facebook and YouTube are that they are totally free options. So you can start producing fairly clean, mature, well-produced live streams uh, with very little money up front that you'd have to invest in gear. The other thing that you get when you move to browser-based and a PC environment is that you can now plug your laptop in. So if you have a solid internet connection somewhere, you're able to leverage that. And that gives you a lot more security, a lot more comfort that the bandwidth you're streaming out with will be maintained throughout the stream. Not 100%. None of these things are really guaranteed when you're dealing with a shared resource like the internet, but it's something that gives you a little more comfort that you're probably going to be doing okay with on the bandwidth side. But there are other options in the browser space for live streaming that give you even more production control. So, two of them that I'm familiar with is BeLive and Get Vocal. Both of these are much more full-featured applications that are browser-based that allow you to stream. So, for instance, with BeLive, you can actually go on and add not just one remote guest, but up to 4 remote guests. So you can have roundtable discussions with different people that are all around, not geographically situated with you. And you can also do things like custom branding. So you can put your own colors and your own backdrops on things. So this gives you now that next level of professionalism where you can start to create a brand, create more compelling, interesting programming because you get to involve more people with more points of view. Uh, the other thing that you can get now with BeLive is you have some basic switching capabilities, and that really gives you a lot more capability in producing an interesting live stream. So you can look, if you have a guest, that you can switch between the guest and yourself as the host. You can do multi-box shots. You can do shots where you have just the guest or the host with a graphic in the background. So again, a lot more creative control over what you can do while still being in a very lightweight hardware footprint and in very low or even free cost in terms of the software you need. So if you look at this from sort of the pros and cons, in browser-based solutions, there are options available that will give you more advanced capabilities that we touched on. You also, again, coming back to the cost, there are free and low-cost options for this. They are also easy to use. I mean, that's one of the other things that I think is very important. In the browser space, just like in the mobile app space, they are designed for people that are not necessarily technically literate, but still have the creative impulse to create and share something with a broad community through live streaming. So that makes them very, very powerful for a very wide audience of potential streamers. The other thing that we've mentioned now is they do have remote interview capabilities, and these can be now fairly sophisticated. So the ability to bring on lots of guests into a production is compelling and creates compelling content. The other thing is they're cross-platform. So if you're Mac or PC, and possibly, though I haven't tried it, maybe even Linux, you have the ability to run these, which means that you don't really have to worry about falling in one camp or another. Whatever device you use to browse the internet, that's the device that you can be using to live stream from. So again, something very compelling there. But there are limitations, again, that go with the advantages that sit here. First is that your creative options tend to be templated. You have fixed screen layouts, fixed ways that you can use graphics or adjust colors. So if you want to do things that are more creative than that promote your brand in more distinct ways, you'll probably be limited to that. The other thing is it's hard to integrate with external sources. So if you want to do something where you want to pull in a video that could also be playing on that laptop, you probably won't be able to do it in an easy way. There are probably workarounds that you can do to force it or to fake it, but by and large, they're not designed with that type of integration in mind. The other piece is they're not designed for multi-camera productions. So in all of these, they're really designed to have a single camera that is facing a host and potentially other sources that can be combined. So that could be remote guest. The other thing that I didn't mention, it could also be like your desktop. So if you want to do more of a PowerPoint presentation or demo an application that's running, you could capture your desktop. But if you really want to do something where you had multiple cameras and you were capturing an event that was going on around you, these are not really optimized for that type of production. So keep that in mind when you think of where you want to go with live streaming options. The next step in options that are available to you is actually application-based live streaming. And this is where things really begin to open up. And it happens on a lot of fronts. So first, you don't really need a lot more in terms of compute power than you have already for browser-based if you want to do very, very limited things with application-based live streaming. So you can work with a webcam, you can work with a mic that's available. The difference now is that you have a lot more control over what you do with those input sources. So you can control the screen layout, you can add graphics, you can add lower thirds, you can do playbacks of videos. You can do desktop captures with presentation like you can do with the browser-based ones. So this gives you a big leg up, and you're not really now making a much larger investment. But if you want to, you can actually start to expand the types of productions you want to do beyond what you could do in the browser-based space. So now you can start to add multiple cameras. You could add multiple microphones. So if you want to do something where you were sitting with somebody and doing an interview at a table, you could each have a mic and you could each have cameras pointed at you. And now you would be able to do things where you could take and switch between the guests, throw up lower thirds, and make a much richer production, more fully branded, better audio options available, multiple audio sources. So that's really very, very powerful when you think of what you could do with a browser on that same type of platform. But again, the cost with this is you start to need more computing power. So your laptop needs to be more capable, or your desktop system needs to be more capable as you start to do more of these types of things. But one place where you'll see application-based live streaming a lot is in the gaming community. And what a lot of game streamers, live streamers that stream the games they're playing, use is software called OBS, or Open Broadcaster software. So with that, you will see a lot of gamers stream the video that's coming off their gaming system, whether that's an Xbox or a PC gaming system. And that would be combined with a video, usually from a webcam, that shows their face. So you can watch them as they play the game and see the game as they see it. And it creates very, very, very compelling content for people that are really interested in the gaming space. And it is one of the most popular open source live streaming options that are available and totally free. If you want to go into more of the paid options, you get a lot of capability as well. Though OBS isn't limited, it can be a little cumbersome for somebody that's not technically versed in PCs and configurations of hardware to work with. But some of the paid components now offer easier ramp ups to get on board and to start live streaming. There's more templates available. The UIs tend to be simpler, and the configuration options tend to be better streamlined in terms of how you can set up to run live streams. So two of the most popular are vMix and Wirecast. And for both of these, you get lots of additional capabilities. For one, you get the ability now to add video capture cards and start to bring in multiple higher end cameras. And again, this all comes at a cost. The hardware becomes more expensive. You now need to have additional devices added to your systems where that's possible. which may be limited in laptops, for instance. Uh, but you definitely have the ability now to do this. You have that also, so I'm clear. You also have that in OBS, but OBS just tends to be a little bit less friendly and a little more demanding on your technical skills to get everything set up the way you want. There's a lot of things in OBS that are based on plugins, so you'd have to know where to get the plugins, download them, install them, and get all that set up successfully. But with vMix and Wirecast, they tend to be sort of full featured as you get them freshly installed. With all these capabilities, you can actually now integrate with a lot more too. So not only do you get, a range of cameras and a range of audio input options, but you can work with other devices as well. So if you want to record somebody giving a presentation on a podium from, with PowerPoint, you can now bring that in as a source from that remote guest, have a camera on the remote guest, and create a composite shot like you probably see right here, where we're using a slide deck and you're seeing the presenter talk. They also, with both vMix and Wirecast, had the ability to bring in remote guest. So again, you now have this ability to take and combine all these different sources and to produce very sophisticated live streams, all the way up to high camera count, high microphone count, high-end productions with tons of graphics, animation, video playback. So there really aren't a lot of limitations. You're just going to need to feel comfortable with setting up the hardware and configuring the software and the operating system to work with everything that you're going to want to use in your production. So, like I mentioned, there are a full range of capabilities with application-based live streaming. Uh, you have free and low cost options. So OBS is free, lower end versions of vMix are free. vMix and Wirecast both have very, very low cost options as well as higher end options that raise the feature count that's available to you. But there are a lot of options that even a beginner that doesn't want to make a big monetary commitment, you can jump in and do this, without having to make a large investment. Uh, the fact you get to work with multiple cameras now becomes a big deal. You can start to create productions, not just where you want to do interviews, or even if they're multi-camera interviews, but now producing events where you have multiple cameras on multiple individuals. That again opens up a lot more possibilities for the types of things you can live stream and the professionalism that can go behind what that live stream looks like to your viewers. The other thing now is it works with external gear. So not just things like PowerPoint, but if you want to use an external graphics system, if you wanted to bring in uh, video from something like VLC running on another platform, all of these things now can start to integrate, which gives you a lot more options when you want to assemble complex productions or when you need multiple people to work on productions. Having different stations you can start to set up becomes a big benefit. Everybody isn't crowded around one interface, one keyboard, trying to do everything all together. So I mentioned that you do have video playback, and now this is built in to all of these systems. And not just you just have video playback, but you have the capability with these videos to do things that work very cleanly in the workflow. So for a lot of these videos, the video playback capability in these software packages, you can tell it to start playing a video, and when that video finishes, switch back to a camera. So that now gives you a simpler workflow. You don't have to worry about switching back everything all the time, and it helps, which really goes to make your productions much more streamlined and less prone to error. Uh, the other thing you get with all of these is the ability to record locally. And this can happen on two fronts. And this is great actually if you're looking to use the video you're live streaming for multiple purposes. So first you can actually capture the live stream and you can capture that locally. So even if there are issues with the internet or connectivity, you can still have a pristine recording of what you streamed out. The other thing you get though is the ability to do what's called ISO recording, where you can create a recording of each of the cameras that you may have in a production. This gives you the option, after you've live streamed, to leverage those individual video sources, because there may be some shots that you want to get that didn't work in the live stream, but you may want to reuse on social media or for other follow-up videos. But also if you made mistakes, it happens to all of us. If you made a mistake somewhere, had a bad camera cut, had a dropout or something that didn't work with the flow you wanted, you can go back in after the fact now and use those ISO recordings to edit a clean video that you can upload and use for other things on the web or in social media. And the other piece, which I touched on a bit with what you could get with the DDR playback, where it can just switch back to a camera, is automation capabilities. The thing that I talked about with DDR playback is fairly basic. It gives you the abilities sort of baked into a checkbox on when I play this video, switch back to the last camera. So that sort of thing is easy, but it can actually let you do, these systems can let you do much more sophisticated automation. And in this case, I'm really talking specifically in this pack about vMix, who has tended to focus the most on adding automation. You have the ability to do things where you can play an intro video, switch to a specific camera, put up a lower third, take the lower third down after a fixed amount of time, and then switch to a second camera, and do that all automated with a single button push. So this now lets you start to do very sophisticated camera moves, sequences of image shots, without having to worry about punching it all in and clicking everything at the right time. So it allows for higher quality productions because you can add more complex, more interesting shots to your productions. But it also makes for smoother running productions because now once you have that automated sequence recorded, you can use it over and over again. So anytime you press that one button, all of those events will happen at the right time with the right switches. And you don't have to worry as somebody that may be running a show, especially if you're running it by yourself and you're there just punching all the buttons as you run your own live stream. Automation really is your friend, and that's a big thing you get with application-based live streaming. But the other side is there are some limitations, which is always the case with these things. First, the more capabilities you want to leverage in these applications, the higher your hardware cost. A lot of these depend on higher end graphics cards, higher end GPUs, as they'll call them. When you buy systems, a lot of systems you'll get, especially laptops, do not have a dedicated GPU. They have what's the built-in graphics that come usually on your Intel chip, and they really are not powerful enough to power some of the more advanced features you're going to want to use in these application-based streaming packages. So something to keep in mind. The other thing is that if you want to add things to your system like external cameras, PTZ cameras, all of those things now can require not just additional horsepower, higher end CPUs, higher end GPUs, but also additional hardware to capture these video and audio streams. So that can be things like SDI or HDMI capture cards. So each of these things will add cost. So the flexibility is there to take advantage of all these things, but all those come as a cost. So, something to keep in mind as you think of what you want to do to get started with live streaming. The other piece is that because these systems are assembled from pieces and parts and not developed by the provider of the software, more technical expertise tends to be needed to get them to run. So you're going to need to not just manage the operating system and all the updates that go with that, but you'll have to feel comfortable installing, potentially drivers for new hardware and capture cards. You'll have to also be comfortable overall in configuring your Windows environment, making sure that your software can see the GPU and not the built-in graphics unit. So things like that can actually cause trouble if you don't have everything configured right. It's something to keep in mind. Again, if you're comfortable with this, that's not necessarily a limitation, but if you don't really have a lot of comfort, around setting up and configuring and managing computers, this could be something that you'd need to keep in mind before jumping in. The other thing you get, which isn't really a limitation, but it could be a limitation based on how you want to use the system, is that your workflows tend to become more complex. Now, automation can help a lot with that, but the more things you want to do, the more cameras you want to switch, the more different types of graphics you want to put up, that can actually add a lot of complexity to how you have to structure the way your show is produced. And especially if you're a lone streamer where you're sort of a one man band, do everything yourself, those complex workflows can become difficult, especially if you're trying to talk and engage with an audience. So, this may be something where either you will simplify the types of things you want to do, but know that you have those capabilities available to you if you want them, or you may have to involve another person to switch the show and to do some of the more complicated things you'd want to be able to do in a production while you are actually in front of the camera talking. So, again, something to keep in mind, not necessarily a limitation, but it could impact the way you want to approach this based on the complexity of the productions you want to produce. So, the last type of system I want to cover are dedicated live streaming systems. So these would be systems where they're all in one. You buy the system, hardware and software, with a dedicated purpose of doing live streaming or video production. So the one that's probably most familiar to people is the NewTek TriCaster. So I have a picture of the TC1. The TriCaster is incredibly powerful, but it also tends to be more expensive. It has a great ecosystem around it. There are a lot of different things you can do with it. And one of the big advantages is that the system is totally optimized for live streaming and video production. You don't have to worry about adding new drivers, adding new hardware, uh, configuring things at the operating system level. The system is basically designed for you to turn it on, build a specific session, add the assets you want, and then run your production. To be clear, though, in the basic model, there's nothing that really a dedicated streaming system can do that an application based system can't. The real differences are around the complexity involved, the setup involved. And you trade off costs for that. These types of systems tend to be more expensive. But one of the other things these systems have typically is more advanced control surfaces, which mirror exactly what you see in the user interface. So, everything, if you look across the bottom at the control surface, that really is a mirror of what you're seeing in that center monitor for the UI for the system. And while you can do things with things like X keys or Stream Decks or other automation devices to press buttons and sort of click to trigger actions, the control surface gives you the ability to create more of a muscle memory around running the system. So this button, this location is what I press to switch to these specific cameras. And that when you want to deal with crews, with different people operating the system for different events, that can be a real advantage. It's very easy to find people that can be technical directors that can run a TriCaster system. But again, there's nothing specific in these systems that they can do that you can't really do with application based systems. So it's something to keep in mind. It's really a trade off from having something which is very standardized, very capable, versus things that have a more personalized flavor on the application front, uh, but can be lower cost. And so, as I mentioned, there are advantages. I mean, these are complete production systems. You don't need to add anything to produce really great productions. And they're also turnkey hardware and software. So you don't need to worry about setting them up and configuring them beyond what you need to do from the creative side and to operate the software itself to build what they call sessions, where you can then run your shows from that. But you don't really have to worry about getting your hands dirty, rolling up your sleeves, and getting into configuring the hardware or any of the operating system level things. Uh, they work with multiple cameras. They work with external gear, same as is available with application-based uh, live streaming alternatives. Video clip playback we've talked about, local recording, both the stream and ISO recording for the cameras. Again, something we've already talked about. Uh, they have automation capabilities, and actually, the TriCaster has, from personal experience, it's what we're using here. The TriCaster has some incredible automation capabilities, and that's definitely something when you're running large productions, or if you're trying to run more sophisticated productions with a skeleton crew, that's something that definitely works in your favor. Uh, the other thing which I mentioned is that the UIs are really optimized for muscle memory. So if it's not something where the same person will be running it show after show, that can be a real advantage. It's easier to crew productions that are based on these types of dedicated systems. But again, they also have drawbacks. They definitely have higher overall cost. So the lowest cost TriCaster you can get is the mini HDMI version, which is going to cost you about $5,000. And for application-based systems, $5,000 can buy you a lot of system. So definitely a, you're paying a premium to have all of these things well integrated and sort of smoothly operating together without a lot of technical knowledge on the hardware or operating system level. The other piece, which again we mentioned, it's the same for application based, there are more complex workflows, uh, plus and minus, as we mentioned before. If you want to do more complex things, the that complexity is necessary, but it's something again keep in mind if you want to jump in and do this. The other thing which is really important to think about when you start to look at this, is that you have limited upgrade options when you buy an all in one system. When you look at an application based solution, you're buying the PC separately from the software. So if at some point you want to upgrade either the features, so for instance, you want to add SDI or HDMI ports to your streaming device, you can do that easily in an application-based setup because it's a PC and you can just expand it as you need to. You really can't do that in these turnkey systems. You need to decide what you want at that point in time, and that's your system is basically going to be limited pretty much to those sets of options, those number of inputs. Uh, that said, there are still lots of ways to you still get lots of software upgrades from the vendors, and they give you lots of options to trade up your gear. But in terms of just longevity, application-based solutions are going to give you a lot of headroom where you can upgrade the software and then upgrade the hardware on whatever schedule you want and leverage it well into the future, probably beyond the useful technical life of a dedicated system that you would be buying at the same time. But I think what's really important as you look at this is that these are not mutually exclusive options when it comes to live streaming. Everybody can use mobile. And I think even if you're in the most sophisticated studio environment, there are going to be lots of times where you're going to want to take out your mobile phone and jump on and do a live stream. That's something that is just very powerful on so many fronts. The browser is a great option if you're in a fixed location and you just want to get on and maybe talk while you're working on something on your computer, or if you want to produce a low end type of production without a lot of graphics and a lot of creative options available. But again, it's very simple. It doesn't require a lot of hardware, and if you just have a light MacBook with you or a lightweight Windows, you know, laptop system, these types of browser-based tools are optimal, especially if you're on the road streaming from a hotel room. Those can be great. Application-based systems, as I said, or dedicated systems, very high capability levels, different levels of cost, different levels of technical knowledge, but both of them have their place. And I think as a suite of options, this is really We have a wealth of riches here. And I think you can start on any one of them. And I think that's the most important thing to think about here. When you look at all of these, the most important thing is actually starting, getting in front of the camera, overcoming that fear of going live and talking to an audience that you can't really see. So, getting started using what you have available is probably the best system for you right now. So, if it's your mobile device, if it's a browser on a laptop, go and start live streaming. Because once you start, you're going to start to understand the types of things you do, the types of productions you'd like to make, the types of graphics you'd like to add, and video you'd like to share. And that can make a very big difference in decisions you make down the road for the types of other systems that you may want to add to your production. So, thank you for letting me go through sort of the options you have available for live streaming. I think that there's a lot to choose from. You don't have to have a huge investment, make a huge investment up front to get started. And as I said, getting started is key. So thank you for joining me for this show. For our show next week, it'll be again a week from today on Friday, June 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for that show, we're going to be talking about NDI. So NDI is NewTek's their video IP protocol that allows you to connect remote cameras, remote audio devices, remote desktops, things of that sort, all over your standard internet, Ethernet connections that you have in your office. So very, very powerful. Really a key part of where the industry is moving, where it's less about having dedicated production wires and more about just bits moving across a traditional network. So until then, thank you for joining, and I'll see you next time. Take care.